an amazing kingdom between ice and forest. It's country of plants and those who want to realize their dreams. Of course, Sweden. Now we go to the center of Scandinavia. Are you ready? If you're ready, let's begin. Think, a state directed by the kingdom in the greenery, but this is not from the kingdoms you know. For example, you have a cafe and every place is full, even if the king comes. He is said to have no place and will be returned. Here everyone is the same. The country's population is 10 million. Its capital is Stockholm. Stop, not up, down. Yes, down. Because if you are in Sweden, you will be amazed by more than 6 places from above. Because it also always here is a work of art. Because this country is built on the rocks. The rocks were drilled during the preparation of the subway. Its station has its own very art history. You can see everyone the same while walking in Stockholm, because 70% of population is blonde. But it is third culture is called paradise we know. Here on the ice is the open air in schools for young children to help people get used to school. You can see they are taking lessons. Plus, if you're a high school student in Sweden, the government gives you $200 a month, and if you save a lot of money, you can go anywhere you want during the summer holidays. But there are conditions. If your prices go down, if there is uncertainty in this case, the money given will be cut off. Let's continue. You will be a little more surprised. The state thinks not only the population, but also of the animals. In Sweden, if a person has a newborn animal, the state gives him a 6-month trip so that he can take good care of the animal. Think if your pet gives birth. What about you? Then station is even better, and at this time you have a trace of 480 days, about 1.5 years. And moreover, the term also applies to fathers. Fathers spending time with their children is almost regulated by law. You don't pay any transportation fare during this period. It is enough, be a parent. The next law that distinguishes Sweden from others. Suppose someone violated traffic rules in Sweden for 3 days without stopping. In this case, the fine imposed on him is given to an accidental driver. Don't you think it is a good way to follow the rules? There are also 2 private drivers in the state. One of them is king, the other is prime minister on private days. In Sweden, you can see a foreign minister sitting in a cafe, drinking wine with you, and a health minister on a bus. Because people here have taken their positions from God, don't act like. Let's get to know the Swedish a little bit. The Swedish people are very simple in their clothes, their homes, and their whole lives. Everyone does their job. No one looks at anyone, doesn't even look. This can be explained in this way. If a person looks at you for more than 3 seconds or likes you very much, either something spilled on you or your clothes were destroyed. No one in the country addresses anyone with the position of the predecessor. No one addresses anyone as a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, or anyone else. Because here people value the person himself, not the jury. Sweden is the world's most potentially demanding country. As long as you have an idea here, as a state will help you immediately. And many of the innovations that come to mind in the world belong to Swedish. They are also one of the most read nations in Europe. They read about 7 hours a week. Education here lasts 25 years. Okay, now let's look at the nature of Sweden. This country is both green and white, despite being the 4th greenest country in the world. It has many amazing places. 60% of the land is forest, and 340 million trees are planted each year, as well as there are 97,000 lakes. Families spend most of their walks by the lake. Winter here is also very interesting for people. Various events are held here, like skiing ads. Here, Too, the ice has had such impact that the world's first ice hotel also belongs to the country. Hotel every year must be prepared from scratch. Sweden is one of the most input countries in nature. Therefore, about 2050, as Petroleum and Co. was one of the first countries to decide to completely abandon the production of the fossil fuels. You can also easily drink all the top water flowing in your home, because all are boiling water and free. Did you know that Sweden is famous for its Nobel Prizes? Also, the famous chemist and explorer Alfred Nobel had more than 155 patents. We only know him as the inventor of dynamite, which is very bad after reading that the result of misunderstanding after the death of his brother was that a newspaper company that saw he was dead simply wrote, died. After wanted to leave a greater legacy, and we created the Nobel Foundation with all its certificates. 90% of the country's population identifies themselves as atheists or agnostics and has great respect for all religions. It is even permissible to recite the call to prayer. The 5-hour call to prayer is given here as in Muslim countries. In addition, Sweden is one of the leading countries in the world in terms of aid to poor countries. And now you may be saying, there is nothing wrong with the state. Of course, there are but also many. Sweden's biggest shortcoming is the lack of sun. There is very little sunlight here. In important parts of the country, sunlight may not be available for months. For example, you look at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but the sun has set and everything is black. Accordingly, working hours start and end quickly. In summer, on the contrary, to the cold, white night happens. Charles Rick goes on and can be in the northern part 24 hours a day. I hope that one day you will pass through this country, because it is a state where everyone has to quite last once. That's it. Other videos are also on Smith. Thanks for watching.